Welcome, everyone. Thank you on behalf of Nancy's family for coming today and braving the cold weather. I'm proud of all of you. We have a special celebration planned with Mark Defelsky and Paulette, and also Pastor Dave, or Chaplain Dave. He's the hospice chaplain of Hospice of Michigan, so it's very special that he's here too. At this time, if you have a cell phone or pager or anything that could disrupt our services, if you could just mute those, that would be fantastic. And thank you all very, very much for coming.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Dave. I'm a chaplain. That's how I got to get some time with Nancy, enjoy her. So fun. I would think hundreds of stories by the time, I had to say goodbye with Nancy. Just so many great stories. And I only saw Nancy stand up once, and I didn't realize she was so pint-sized. But man, there's a lot inside that pint-sized person, huh? So good, so good. So thanks for being here. I'm just going to pray for a moment, and then we're gonna enjoy some music, and then after that, we're just going to have a time of sharing. There might be a couple of you that have a story or a memory you'd like to share. That's really neat. Sound good? I should warn you, I'm an empath, which is really good for my work, but gets in the way when I'm nervous. And so if you see me choke up, I'm sorry. It's I don't think I will, but sometimes I get a little bit nervous. So let's just pray for a moment. Father, we just acknowledge that you're here. You're always here. Whether I'm having a great day of faith and see you everywhere, or it's not that kind of day. But you're with us. Even your name is meaning that you are with us. And so we're glad about that. I'm glad that we're in the company of some really beautiful people here. And we just ask you to do what you want to do here today. Amen.
On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies lay down a stay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it one day for a crown. Oh, that old rugged cross, so despised by the world, has a wondrous attraction for me. For the dear Lamb of God left his glory above to bear it to dark Calvary. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it one day for a crown.
Thank you. That's really good. So we're just going to have a few moments for whoever would like to come on up and share a tale or two or a memory. That would be great.
I knew this wasn't going to be easy. It's so silly. She was 94. So, if you don't know me, I'm Shonda, Terry's daughter, Nancy's granddaughter. I would always tease her and, sit and knock on the door and come in and say, "Your favorite grandkid's here?" She goes, "You're all my favorite." She was always excited for visits and calls. Always responded with excitement and questions to your stories and how your day was. When I was younger, I remember she knitted lots of blankets. She gave them to everyone in the family, whether you needed one or not. She had so many blankets. She gave out for newborns and for all of us. She lived a simple life. She loved flowers, bird watching, her family, and close friends. Watching her favorite TV shows. But she was quite witty. I would tease her when I'd come over and she had a new muumuu on or a new outfit. "Grandma, you got a hot date?" She was, "What's that?" And every time I leave, I tell her, "Be good, you behave." "Why?" I said, "'Cause I said so. I don't have to listen to you." Like, "Grandma." Yeah, she'd be like, "You can't tell me what to do." That's right, I couldn't. I do already miss those 10 p.m. phone calls. "Shonda, are you home? I'm sorry to bug you. I just need a cough drop." "Yes, Grandma, I'll be right over." That was a privilege of living so close to her that I had. She would also, I gave her a funny nickname back when Uncle Don lived with her, and they had the 2 cats, and she would playfully meow at them. So I started calling her Grandma Meow Meow to my friends. "We're going to go see Grandma Meow Meow today." And I'd tell her that, and she'd just laugh and meow at me. We bonded over our love of playing violin, speaking French, math, and both being lefties. But I recently spent time with her filling out a book about her story. She loved working on it, and it brought back so many memories of her childhood. Her dog, Major, of course, we all know about Major. Another story she shared with me. I will cherish those times forever, as she lived a great story. A simple one. Not too many would find very exciting, as she didn't travel or do everything that some of us are doing now. But she loved her family dearly, and she is already gratefully missed. I'm thankful to be a granddaughter of Nancy Forrester.
Good job, Sean. I don't think I'm gonna get up and come up there, but I think you might hear me from back here. I've known Nancy close to 40 years, and we were quite kindred spirits when we started working together, and made so many good memories through the year. As Shonda said, you know, she used to sit and make those beautiful baby Afghans. And I remember a time when we took a big batch of them, probably a garbage bag full, up to the All Faiths Chapel, which then had become the Women's Resource Center, so that all these mothers of these babies could have a nice Afghan. And then, you know, I just had no idea who Nancy was when I first got to know her, but through the years I've been reminded of what a accomplished and great woman she was. You know, when she was very much of a student, and when she was in high school and in the band and in the orchestra, playing the clarinet and playing the violin, and then going on to college and studying all these things that I never had learned, and all the stories she would tell about going to Florida and about growing up and what her dad Caesar was like, and just so many good memories. And like Shauna said about Major, that was her little Cocker Spaniel boy, and she couldn't wait for him to be able to leave the litter so she could ride over there and for the last time and put him in her basket and bring him home on her bicycle. And she was so fond of her father, and she would tell how he'd have like 4 newspapers out in front of him on the table in the morning, and how he always wore a suit because they had a funeral business and they had a furniture store. And one year her dad said, "Nancy, you can pick out whatever bedroom set you want for your room." And of course she picked out the most highfalutin, expensive one that there was. And Christmas at her house, and where the tree was by the fireplace, and her mom singing, her mother playing the piano, and Nancy and her harmonizing and singing all kinds of songs. And her dad loved classical music, and so she was introduced to Beethoven and all the wonderful artists, and she just knew so many beautiful pieces. And Fleur de Lis was one of her favorites, and sometimes I would come to visit and I would bring my phone in and I'd be on YouTube and I'd have Fleur de Lis playing, so when I walked in the door it would be accompanying me. Oh, and then we used to read a lot together. You know, when she lost her eyesight, she couldn't do crossword puzzles anymore, so we would do those, and I'd pick her brain for, you know, what these were, and she'd always know, because she did crosswords for years. And yeah, so we read several series of books, so we got to know all the characters, and getting a book for a gift was a great privilege for her. And she always liked to watch Andy and Barney, don't you know? And that was one of her favorites, and the Golden Girls. And then in later years, she would watch what she called the fatties, which was the 600-pound ladies that just couldn't get a grip on things. And then for some reason, she really enjoyed to watch Bar Rescue. And in the later days, she would lay in her bed and tell Terry, 79, 79. And I couldn't figure out what in the world she was talking about. That was the channel. So anyway, I go on too long here, but taking her to Rhinelander, meeting her classmates, meeting Ellen and Joanne, and hearing stories how her mom would pack lunches and they'd ride their bicycles down to the park, and they'd just ride their bikes all around town, and people would stop and say, "Can you tell us which street is Pearl or Thayer?" And she would know, they girls would know right away, and they'd direct traffic, you know. So that's probably a lot more than you asked for, but I'm just grateful that I was Nancy's good friend for so many years, and I still miss her, but I'm grateful that she's walking with Jesus. Thank you for listening. Yeah.
All right. Hello and welcome, everyone, to Grandma Nancy's celebration of life. And what a long one Grandma had, 94 years. I wasn't supposed to cry, that's why I'm avoiding you guys. How absolutely incredible is that? I mean, let's take a moment and reflect on what has happened in 94 years. In 1929, the Great Depression. In 1931, the Star-Spangled Banner, the song we all recognize before any sporting event, became the national anthem. And who actually knew that? 1945, World War II came to an end. 1953, we discovered how DNA works. 1969, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. 1970s, Ted Bundy. 1983, the internet was born. 1990s, Bill Clinton. Need I say more? 2001, 9/11. 2007, the iPhone, which Grandma had. 2009, the first black president. Now let's fast forward a decade to 2020 with COVID-19. Okay, we just covered a lot, and that's just the surface. Now imagine living through all of that. Not only did Grandma live through it, but her mind remained sharp, and she was able to recall these events with vivid details. But I must back up because I got ahead of myself. I'm not sure how many of you know that Grandma earned her master's degree in business and foreign language from the University of Miami somewhere around 1953, and went on to become a teacher. And I can tell you from my time spent with Grandma, she loved to teach. She would always enthusiastically tell me stories about the various classes she taught. So I thought it would only be appropriate to celebrate this amazing woman today with a final lesson plan. Aside from our brief history lesson, as outlined above, in this lesson we will explore learning objectives, materials needed, and a final assessment. Today's learning objective is the topic of love and strength. I have been told that Grandma did not use the phrase, "I love you," very often. And at one point in my life, I really started to pay attention to this when our conversations would come to an end, and she would do her usual grandma giggle, and you all know what I'm talking about, and I can hear it as I recall this and say, "Talk to you later, sweetie." And although she may not have always directly said, "I love you" to me, and I must also add that she did tell me she loved me on several occasions, just not every conversation. She even taught me how to say it in French. Je t'aime, Grandma. I love you. I never once doubted her love for me. She just had a different way of showing it. Grandma loved through her homemade bread, and don't you dare try to use oil or butter. You must make it with lard. And cinnamon rolls, and potatoes fried in bacon grease, and cooking her kids their favorite meals on their birthdays. And by randomly calling her grandkids, pretending it was an accident and that she didn't want to bother them. But in reality, she wanted to hear how they were doing. And she would proceed to keep them on the phone for as long as they would allow. She was, there is no doubt, a very loving person. She endured a lot of heartache in 94 years, and she never once spoke ill of anyone. And I mean anyone. She also didn't let the sadness of this life harden her. She was so incredibly strong, right until the end. Okay, we're moving on, because life is always moving forward, no matter how desperately we try to slow it down. And what do teachers always say? We have a lot to cover today. Materials. So what materials do you need to love or to be strong? None. That's the beauty in love and strength. Share a kind smile with someone, because we are all fighting internal battles. Send a card or a quick text message. Give a call. Bake something for someone. Be present. Listen and be happy. Laugh often. Final assessment. 94 years goes by faster than you think, and time is all we have in this life. So you decide how you want to spend it, who you want to spend it with, the impressions and the lessons you will leave behind. Never stop learning. Evaluate the way you communicate love. Celebrate life. Do as the Bible instructs in Romans 12. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are to teach, teach well. In closing, Grandma wanted everyone to wear bright, happy colors today as a way of expressing gratitude for the years we did get with her, not to mourn her loss, but to see this time as an opportunity to be truly thankful for the gift of time. to love one another, just as she loved all of us. And lastly, here's to strong women. May we know them, be them, and raise them, just as Grandma did. Je t'aime, Grandma, until I see you again.
It's getting really comfortable on that couch, so. Those were really good. Those were really good. Thank you for that. I'm sure you all enjoyed that and they were meaningful. There was a French philosopher, Simone Weil, and she said these words, there are only two things that pierce the human heart. Beauty, one is beauty, and the other is affliction. And I imagine some of you have had your hearts pierced. And that will remain so for a while. And you take all the time and the journey you need to move through that pain. But there's also beauty. Right? There's beauty in these stories. There's beauty in this room. I felt like I knew Nancy pretty well with all the great stories she shared. A lot about grandkids. A lot about kids. And so she really loved you and she was so proud of you. I love that you shared that she just loved to live life, right? Because that's the beauty of life. Baseball games, chats on the front porch, I don't know, campfires, your first trip out west, first steps, first day at school, right? Whatever those things are. And I think Nancy would share, as you've shared, to really drink deep from that. Continue to live and continue to live well, right? That's beautiful. I'm going to share a couple stories that were meaningful to me, still are, about Jesus. This is tough for me because I don't know you at all. I don't know what your orientation is, your worldview, your faith, but we're just going to jump in a little bit, okay? And I think you'll see where I'm going with this. First of all, there's one theologian that says this: if you read the Gospel of Mark and you don't notice that Jesus is either on his way to dinner, having dinner, or coming home from dinner, you missed a lot. That's what Jesus was like. Dallas Willard, an amazing philosopher, just passed a few years ago, probably the heaviest hitter in the 21st century in terms of his contributions to the faith. Toward the end of his life, someone asked him, Dallas, if you could describe Jesus in one word, what would it be? You know what he said? Relaxed. I would not have come up with that word. Not with the church upbringing that I had. Would not have thought of that. That's the heart of your Father. We can relax. This idea of real rest, right? With a twinkle in his eye, I believe, and for good reason, when Jesus says, why are you always worried about what you're wearing or where you're going or what happened yesterday? Doesn't today have enough to worry about? Just enter in, as you said, be present. That's a beautiful, beautiful way to live. There was a day where Jesus was on his way to a little town called Bethany, and probably his closest friends of all were there. Martha, Mary, and their brother Lazarus. Some of you may know this story. It is over the top, audacious. I mean, if you know the story, you know what I mean. And someone sent word to Jesus, Lazarus is really ill. Can you please come? So he's on his way, and he has some of his disciples with him. And though he didn't want this to happen, he was kind of a celebrity in towns, and that would just make his work very difficult. And sure enough, there was all these people trying to get to Jesus. And at one point, Jesus says, hey, someone touched me. And one of his disciples makes a little joke and says, someone touched you? We're in a mob, Jesus. Everybody's touching you. It's crazy right now. He goes, no, I don't mean that. There was something happened. He felt it in his spirit and his body. Something happened. Well, it turns out that there was a little lady who had been afflicted with a really difficult condition physically, and she had it for decades. And she said to herself, if I could just even touch his garment, perhaps I might be, actually the word is saved, which I think is interesting. Saved from the life that I'm living, saved from the condition, the affliction that I'm under. And he feels it. And here's where the story gets really interesting. That's a miracle, and Jesus did a number of them, and I think that's awesome. But when I read that years ago, I'm like, there's a miracle inside the miracle. Here's the miracle inside the miracle. Jesus tells his disciples, hang on, deal with these people. I need a few minutes. Because it says, then he kept looking for her until he found her. See, she was used to hiding because of her condition. She didn't want to be seen. But Jesus lovingly, patiently continues to look. And he meets her. And in one rendition of the gospel it says, and she told him her whole story. Do you see the miracle? If Jesus really was who we think he was the very heart from the bosom of our Creator, he's like that. He wants to know your whole story. God is that patient and interested and curious. Can you imagine what Nancy experiences now? Can you imagine perhaps what we will experience when the full restoration of all things occurs and we have time and we tell our tales? We relax, we celebrate, and we live the life that we've always wanted. I think that's beautiful. I think that's where we're going. To those who go, yeah, you're a good storyteller maybe, but that's all bunk. It's okay. It really is. Because it's audacious to believe in some of this stuff. But I do have the advantage of the work that I do. And I could tell you tales that you would not be able to explain. We'd have a great time over a cup of coffee or a glass of beer and say, so explain how this happened. There's mystery everywhere, folks. Stuff you cannot explain. And that makes life rich and mysterious. I'll end with this. You knew Nancy, you saw her for 40 years, but have you ever thought that you haven't seen Nancy for who she really is yet? And that's because you haven't seen anyone for who they really are. Yet. Not yet. Because the same Jesus who loved his best friends, who loved to spend time with people, says to his closest male friend, John, who was one of the disciples, at the end of John's life, who was around 94 when he had his revelations, by the way. He was in prison on an island because he was considered a rebel against the empire. Toward the end of his visions, he sees Jesus, and Jesus says, John, look around. I've made all things new again. That's where we're going. That's where we're going. And here's the thing. You don't have to believe it to believe that God exists. Do you see where I'm going? If I don't believe God exists, he still exists. If he exists. If I do believe God exists, and he exists, then he exists. It's like Alaska. I've never been to Alaska. If I don't believe Alaska exists, Alaska doesn't care. Because it's there. God's existence in his heart for us does not depend on how you see him. We don't have to make up the existence of all that love and goodness and future. It's waiting for us. It's waiting for us. That's a great hope. All right, I'm going to pray for a moment, and then we're going to close with a song. Actually, why don't I have you sing? That would be great, and then I'll close us, and we'll be on our way.
wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home.
So who shall separate us from the love of Jesus? Shall trouble or hardship, persecution, going hungry, being naked, facing danger, even the sword? No. In all these things, we're more than conquerors. I love this. And by the way, the man saying this, his life would read like something from Amnesty International, the Apostle Paul. A crazy life. Toward the end of his life, he says this: "For I'm convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels, demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything in all of creation will ever separate us from the love of God that's in Jesus." Anything. Nancy's doing well. She's home. She's at rest. And we get it all back again someday. All of it. Father, I pray that we'd have some of that in our days, that type of hope. I pray that that would operate even today, where loved ones tell great stories and laugh and cry and just enter into the moment, celebrating Nancy's life and all that is yet to come. Thank you that these good people came to spend time here. It means so much. And we love you, God. Amen. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Chaplain Dave, Mark, and Paulette. Beautiful. Remember to turn your phones back on so your people can find you. And thank you all very, very much for coming, and stay warm.